All right, in this video, we're going to talk about two addition postulates, one involving segments, one involving angles. And what we're going to find is that it's very similar. The parts just change. So the segment addition postulate essentially says this. If we have a segment and it's broken up into two parts, right? This segment, which we'll call A, here, this section, is going to be congruent, or if we add up these two sections here, sorry, they're not congruent yet. This section plus this section would equal to the whole thing, right? Now, what I tend to do is call this part, because this is part of the whole thing, and this is a part, and then this is the whole. So the segment addition postulate really says part plus part is equal to the whole thing. Okay, so let's look at a quick example here on how we can do this type of problem. There's a simple way that says something like this. If this were 10 and 20, then the whole thing is going to end up becoming 30, because 10 plus 20 is going to equal to the whole thing, which is 30. Okay, so that's a very simple example. And now, if we want to make this a little bit more challenging, what if we said this part is 10 and this part is 50? So the whole thing is 50. So 10 plus some number is going to make it equal to 50. So in this case, we would subtract these two numbers and we would get 40 for our missing part. That's a very basic example using just numbers. Now what happens if we want to make this a little bit more algebraic, okay? So what we know is this. Sometimes they'll tell us if this is point A, point B, and point C, if they said AC, segment AC is equal to 10, for example, I'm just making up a random number, and then I'm gonna have 2x and then x plus 1, okay? So if we look here, part is 2x, the other part is x plus 1, and what we're going to do is we're going to add those up. And when we do, they're going to equal to the whole thing, in this case, which is 10, okay? So now from here, we're going to use our equation solving skills and get 3x plus 1 is equal to 10. Subtract 1, x would equal to 3 when we do our steps. Now the problems may ask you to then find the values of different segment lengths. So what we can then do is plug in. So 2 times 3 is 6. Up here, 3 plus 1 is 4. So the segment lengths would be 6 and 4, and when we add them up, they get a value of 10, okay? Now, so we have a basic example with numbers, we have an example with equations. Here's a special case, right? So if we have a segment, right, and it's broken up like so, and they tell you that this point is a midpoint, okay, what that means then is that this segment here on the left is going to equal to the segment on the right. So in a very simple example, if this is a midpoint, if this is 10, then this has to be 10 as well, right? I think most students will understand that. Then when it comes to the expression part here, okay, so say we had this, right? So this section's 3x, this section's x plus 4. So the property of midpoint then, here's our vocab term, and we have property that goes with it, and it says that this part will equal to this part. So we would set our equation like this, and then solve for x, and then depending on if we need to plug the value in or not, we would do so, okay? So here's a special case. This is the only time that it's equal, and that's because we have this vocab term called a midpoint. In this example up here, it was not a midpoint. And so what we do is just add them up, and it's gonna equal to the whole thing, okay? Now, the same concept applies to angles. So in this case, in angle addition, typically you have an angle and it's split by another ray, okay? And without saying anything else, we know that this part right here and this part right here are gonna equal to the whole thing. So it's the same concept we have over here. So for example, if this were 30 and this were 50, then the whole thing would be equal to 80, right? If we have another example where the whole thing is 100, and this part is 30, right? How much is this lower part? Well, 30 plus something will equal to 100, and that something will be 70, because these two parts have to add up to that. Then when it comes to the expressions, like this, we're gonna do the same thing. So say we have this same example. Say this is 3x, and this is 2x plus 4, okay? And all of that is equal to 10. So say the angle is 10 degrees. 10 degrees, okay? So we know that 3x, this part, plus the other part, right, is equal to the whole thing, to 10. And then we go through our equation steps of combining like terms, subtracting and solving and so on, okay? All right, now the last case is our special case of angle bisector or angle segment addition. If they tell you that this middle ray is an angle bisector, then that means that this top angle is going to be congruent to the bottom. And then what we did over here where one part is equal to the other part, we will use. So when we have the special cases down here, one part will equal to the other part. In all the other examples, it's part plus part equals the whole thing. Okay, so hopefully that simplifies these concepts of angle addition and segment addition. And then we talked about the special properties of midpoint and angle bisector.